So let's, as we spoke last time, uh, the financial accounting, or in other words, the accounting structure has three main branches. The financial accounting part of it, management accounting part of it, and the cost accounting. So in other words, when you say financial accounting, it's more towards using historical information to provide financial information for the stakeholders. Management accounting is basically provides internal information which are used for internal planning, decision making, and controlling purposes. So I mentioned an example which is for a manufacturing organization. So for a manufacturing organization, they would like to find out how much of a production that they have already made, how much is utilized, and how much is required for future period. And that kind of a statistical forecast can be done with the internal information, which is normally called the management cost information. But there are organizations which only focuses on production, and those type of companies we normally make use of cost accounting. This is to make use of uh, costing. Costing means you identify the values of your goods and services, and the mechanism that you adopt to value those goods and services. So in terms of the importance of accounting, we consider it to be a social phenomenon, as I mentioned. So the investors will be very keen to invest more and more when there are profitable businesses. So as you know, currently, even the investors are having problems in investing in companies due to the current COVID-19 situation. So if it is a profitable market, then there will be more influx of investors coming in and investing in companies. And secondly, it acts as a source of information. That is, accounting helps to provide the important information not only to the third parties, but also to the management. So when we went through the stakeholders, one of the stakeholders I told that it is the management. So people who are making or taking forward the decisions made at the top. But it is also acts as a source of information for the people outside. That is your suppliers, your borrowers, the service providers. So it could be for anybody. And thirdly, it acts as a mean of control. Control means how you can control your expenses in an organization, how you can improve in terms of your income. So it's actually acts as a tool which is used to direct and control the resources of the organization. And then with regard to the accounting process, as you know, there are transactions and events which are taken in as an input into the accounting process, and the output result is the financial statements. And we also went through the transactions, what are external transactions and what are internal transactions. And also, now we come into the very important accounting cycle. So what do you do with the accounting cycle? The accounting cycle starts firstly at observing the entity's operation, what kind of operation it is. Say, for example, if you are doing a banking business, banking is your banking will be your operation. So what is banking then? Banking is accepting deposits and lending money to borrowers. So this is the fundamental of banking business, where you will accept money and you will provide money for those who need money. But in this scenario, what are the transactions? Where the depositor will bring in money, so you have to accept cash, And on the other side, the people who wants to borrow will come to the bank and they will ask for a loan. So you will lend money. But in between, what can happen? There are so much of other events or transactions that may come up. Say, for example, a person who has come to deposit money might also wants to take out money as and when required. So you see, even though the entity's operation is banking, there will be plenty of transactions that are happening behind the scene. So you need to understand all the entity's operations and then the related transactions. Once these transactions are identified, you have to classify them into for the recording purposes. And we record them in the primary books, which I told you all. We might take it up maybe the 6th chapter, the primary books. Once you have recorded it in the primary books, it goes into accounting for the transactions. So now you have to account for the transactions where the monetary value is taken into consideration. Now, from observing the entity's operation up to the point of accounting for the transaction is actually the recording of the transaction. But beyond that, what you see is actually what is required for financial reporting. So even though the accounting cycle basically has two components, one is identifying and recording the transaction, that is up to the point of accounting the transactions, and beyond that it is how you present the financial information already recorded. So under that phase, what you will do is you will extract a trial balance, which we will learn subsequently, and then you prepare an adjusted trial balance. Then you prepare a set of financial statements to be given for the auditors for them to go through before you put it to the stakeholders or the shareholders. Then the adjustments or whatever the changes that the auditors require, you will come and include those which are called post-closing adjustments. And then once you have prepared your financial statements, what you do, you move into your next financial year. Then we also looked at the double entry system. So the business transactions will have two aspects, and they are named as debits and credits. So these two names have to be remembered because we are going to take this forward with these two terms in the rest of this program. A system of accounting where both aspects of each transactions are recorded is prescribed as the double entry system. So there had been instances where in your exam, either you might have been asked to define what is double entry system, or they might give you 4 answers to identify which confines to the double entry system. So what do you mean by double entry system is a system of accounting where both aspects of the transaction. Now, what are the both aspects? The debits and the credits. So a system of accounting where both aspects of each transaction are recorded as per the prescribed rules. Okay. So the double entry system, as you know, keeps the accounting equation in balance all the time. So what does it mean? It means that you have to comply or confine to the accounting equation. Now, what is the accounting equation? Assets equals liabilities plus equity. So you understand that the double entry system, if it is properly followed, then the accounting equation will stay true forever. As long as there is a manipulation or maybe a change or not complying with the double entry system means you are going to have a imbalanced accounting equation. Okay. Then we went, I think this is where we stopped. So let's look at the basic form of an account. Now, if you look at an account, the account has two sides of it. One we call it as the right side. One is known to be the left side. So when you write an account in your books, this is how you see it. The screen, on the screen, what you see is your right side and there is a left side. Now, mostly what happens, the right side is called as the credit side of the account. And the left side of the account is known as debit side. So I know that some of you, or maybe most of you all, might know these stuff, but there may be students who might not know these. So for the benefit of those also, we need to cover this. Then going on with this, we know that the result of the credit side is known as a credit balance. The result of the debit side is known as a debit balance. But what is important is, if you look at this account structure, on top of the line, there is a caption called the title of the account. So the title of the account is actually the name of the account. Now, when a customer comes to your bank and asks for his account or account number, what does it actually means? You will have a record of the account of that person who has come by his name. And you will also internally have another indicator which is called account number. So from the customer's point of view, customer has two indications. One is the number given to him, which is used to call the account. And also the account will also have his name to identify whether it is the right person. But in business, it is totally different. The title of the account means how you are trying to explain the nature of this particular income, expense, asset, liability, equity. So which in other words means the title of the account will be to identify whether this is an asset, liability, income, expense, or equity. So going forward, we are not going to deal with the individual customer's account because that is not relevant to us. So what is relevant to us is what do we make use of for financial reporting and what type of a name that we use for identify these 5 categories of classes. We call them as account classes. Very importantly, you will see the lines intersecting resembles us the letter T. So as a result, we call this as a T account. So let me demonstrate this in the screen. As you know, I hope everybody can see the screen.
No, sir.
Even the presentation?
Yes, now we can see.
Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, if you look at the title of the structure of the account, this is how it was. So this is where I call it as the title of account. And you have the debit side and the credit side. And if you see, now, please look at the screen. The intersection of this line and this line, what does it mean? It shows us this. Can you all see that? Is it visible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, if you look at this, we call it as the T account. The T account. Please
Yes,
make a
sir.
note of it. It is known as the T account. So going forward, I will make use of this word T account very regularly. So you need to understand what I mean by T account. T account means this particular structure where we make use of this to identify whether this account belongs to an income, expense, asset, liability, or equity. So those are the 5 categories. We call them as classes. Those 5 classes of accounts, or maybe classes, will be indicated using the T account. Okay? So I hope you can see the presentation now. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So the basic form of the account resembles the letter T for us. And what do we have in an account? As I told you, an account is an individual accounting record of the increases and decreases in a specific asset, liability, or owner's equity. Now, what do you mean by asset, liability, or owner's equity means? It is the accounting equation. So any debit or credit account will ultimately end up in one of the asset, liability, or equity. So if you are following the double entry system, which means you are going and impacting the asset, liabilities, and equities of the business. And if it is getting impacted, then you know in between you have a sign of equal. Then you have to comply every transaction that you do in accordance with the accounting equation, which is assets equals liabilities plus equity. An entity must have separate accounts. For example, for cash. Now, what is cash? Cash is an asset. Then you might have accounts for salaries expense. The name itself gives you an indication. It is salaries. Then we also might have accounts payable. Now, these terms will come familiar to you as we go on. And you also need to be very creative in creating names for the accounts. Now, when there is a transaction given, I mean, going forward, when there is a transaction given in the exam question or maybe in the examples that we do, you need to identify the nature of the transaction. And accordingly, you need to name the account in which you are going to record this transaction. Okay? So the name accounts payable means wherever you have purchased goods from your suppliers and for which you need to pay them back, initially it is recorded in the account called accounts payable. So we will go and identify all these, maybe not in full, but most of the accounts we will come across. So in its simplest form of an account consists of the title of the account, the left side or the debit side or the credit side, which are the important components of the account. Then, as I told you, the types of accounts can be 5: assets, liabilities, capital, income, and expense. So you please make a note here. These 5 types are also known as class of accounts. Class of accounts. Please make a note. Class of accounts. So sometimes in exams or maybe people when they use, they might ask you, what are the classes of accounts? So in simple terms, when you say classes of accounts, it is asset, liability, capital, income, and expense. But in addition to this, there is another class which I have not put up here because it doesn't have an impact on the accounting equation. That is called contingent accounts. Contingent accounts. I don't know how many of you know. In the banking business, there are a lot of commitments that we make. For example, if you say you issue a bank guarantee to a party or to a customer, what does it mean? You are going to guarantee a payment for one of your customers requests to a third party. Let me give you an example. Let's say a company which has got a contract to put up a road, or maybe reconstruction of a existing road, let's say. So most probably this is going to be a government contract because the government has offered this contract to this particular company. But the government might disburse funds to this particular company as and when they construct the road. Okay, so it is going to be part by part that they are going to disburse money or the price that they have agreed with the company for the construction of the road. So what happens? The government might require, that is the Road Development Authority, might require this company to obtain a bank guarantee. So what this company will do is the company will come to your bank and request for a bank guarantee for this particular project. So if the customer is known to you and you are familiar with the customer and you know their business and their capabilities of repaying, you will go and agree to offer a guarantee to this customer. So what does mean? The bank agrees to pay the government as a loss or penalty in case if this customer or the company is not capable of finishing the contract. If they fail to complete the contract, then the bank will have to pay the government a certain amount which will be agreed upfront. Now, what are we doing as a bank? We are going and giving a guarantee to the government. If this particular company fails to complete their project, I will pay you. In the sense, it is the bank who is going to pay. Now, this is going to be a commitment. But this commitment may or may not arise in the future. Because if the company completes the project or the contract as agreed, there is no commitment on the part of the bank. But we don't know until this company completes the project. So as a result, ongoing basis, the bank has a commitment on this particular project. We might have a liability in the future. Now the 5 classes that you see here, that is B, is called the liability accounts. What do you mean by that? That is a liability which you have already incurred. For example, you have consumed electricity, means that is you are liable to pay. So the event has already occurred. But the example that I have given you now is a liability which may or may not arise in the future. And that kind of a liability is known as contingent liability. I would like you all to take down that. It is called a contingent liability. It's a contingent liability. So contingent liability is also going to be recorded in accounts. Recorded in accounts. So already we had 5 classes of accounts. In addition to that, now we have another account called contingent liability account. So altogether now we have 6 classes. Okay. So you can take down as the sixth class of account, which is the contingent liability. So you need to understand why I have not listed it here is because it doesn't have an impact to your accounting equation. It doesn't have an impact to your accounting equation. Please make a note of that. Then we also go into some important topic, which is called the normal balance. The normal balance. So it is part of the double entry bookkeeping technique where the normal balance will lead us to the accounting classification of an account. Let me explain it in detail. And we also make use of the very important abbreviation. We call it as abbreviation, where we will make use of an account will have either credit balance or a debit balance. And that is what we are going to call it as a normal balance. Okay, right. So what does it mean? Now, let us understand this first. So you have an account. Okay, this is some account. And the account has two sides. As you know, this is your left side, which is called the debit. Let me write it in caps. And this side, we call it as credit. So we are trying to make use of an abbreviation here, which is very generic, where I would rather start with this. When you say credit, we generally make use of the abbreviation CR. The abbreviation CR is used to indicate credits. So we understand that it would have come from this. Okay. So in the word credit, you have CR. From that, you have taken credit. Similarly, for the debit, we will have DR. So credit is CR, debit is DR. Now don't ask me how come you have DR here when you don't have anything in the word debit. Okay, so I think the father of accounting, Luca Pacioli, might have thought, let this be credit from taking from CR, but to make it very simpler and understanding, he has made it as DR for debit. So debits will be called as DR and credits will be called as CR. Now we also spoke about double entry accounting system. Now what do you mean by that? We are going to generate certain debits and credits to the accounts that we make use of, which have to be in compliance with the accounting equation. You see, assets equals liabilities plus equity. So the basic structure, the T account structure, has a debit and a credit, and the debit will be known as DR and the credit will be known as CR. When you pass debits and credits to the accounts that you have, end of the day, it has to comply with the accounting equation. Now, what does that mean? You have to understand this very clearly. Now, see, the accounting equation has two components. the left side and the right side. So which means the left side of the equation has to be equal to the right side. Now I will map these into this. Okay? The accounting equation is going to be mapped to the account now. So I may call this as the left side and this side is called to be the right side. Now if you map it, what is the left side here? Debit. Similarly, in the accounting equation, the left side is going to be your debit. Here the right side is your credit, which means the right side here is also your credit. Is that clear to you all? Can I have a response, please? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now we have mapped this accounting equation to the account to understand what is the relationship. The relationship is the left side here, we are going to map it to the left side of the equation, that is on this side, which is going to be debit, and the right side, which is again mapped to the account, the right side is going to be the credit. Now what does it mean? It leads us to a very important finding. What is that? Assets going to have a debit balance. Liabilities going to have a credit balance. Equity going to have a credit balance. So the topic that we are discussing now, that is the normal balance, if you look at it, so the normal balance, what it means is, by nature, what kind of a balance this account should have. So which means, if it is an asset account, the balance should be generally debit. If it's an asset account, the balance should be a debit. If it's a liability account, by nature, the normal balance should be a credit balance. By nature, it should be a credit balance. And lastly, if it is equity, then it has to be a credit balance. Is that understood? I hope it's clear.
Yes.
Right. So this understanding is very important, because if you don't understand this fundamental, it will be very difficult for you to going forward. To understand what is an asset, what is a liability, what is an equity, how do I identify the accounts? Because as we go on, we will be dealing with the types of accounts. So when we say types of accounts, you need to understand what kind of a balance it is going to be. What kind of a balance it is going to be. Now, I will take another step forward. That is, this equity has components. What are the components? It has capital, income, expense, and also I will put dividends. So these are the basic items. The equity, the component of equity here will have capital, income, expense, and dividends. Now we said that the total of this generally expected to be a credit. Why? It is on the right side of the accounting equation. It is on the right side of the equation. So within this credit, you know what is going to happen with these items, because we also learned the extended accounting equation or expanded accounting equation. What does it say? Assets equals, sorry, I don't know whether you can see it. Let me write it here. Assets equals liabilities plus capital plus income minus expense minus dividend. So now we have expanded the accounting equation, and what are the components? These are the components of equity. So likewise here, you need to know what kind of a balance these will have in general. So capital will have a credit balance. Income will have a credit balance. Expense will have a debit balance. And dividends will have a debit balance. So this is what we call it as the normal balance. Normal balance. So I would prefer if you can take 2 minutes to take it down in your respective exercise books. Please go immediately and take it down. Sorry. Oh, only the middle part is visible. But what do I do? But I was told that whatever that is on the screen. How about now? Is it visible? Okay. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll stick to the middle part of it. I might have to raise it then. And I will rewrite this. So you know the equity component. Equity component will have 4: capital, income, expense, and dividends. Okay. So the capital will have normally a credit balance. Income will have a credit balance. Expense will have a debit balance. And dividends will have a debit balance. And this is what we call it as the normal balance of these accounts. The normal balance of these accounts. Is it visible now? Right. Okay. So I would like you to take down this quickly. Okay. So I hope you would have taken down. Let's get on with the lesson. Right. So what do we understand here now? That is, if it's an asset account, it will have a debit balance. If it's a liability or equity, then it will have a credit balance. But then again, the equity account can be expanded into asset, liability, sorry, capital, income, expense, and also the dividend. Capital, income, expense, and also the dividend. So accordingly, capital accounts will have a credit balance, income will have a credit balance, expense will have a debit balance, and dividends will have a debit balance. So now we are going to look at some demonstrations. An asset account. Now you know, if it is an asset account, what is the balance of the account? It is a debit. It is a debit. So into this asset account, if you go and put more and more debits, the account balance will go up or go down. What do you think? Any response? If it's an asset account, if you go and put more and more debits, what would happen? Right. Okay. So let us try to understand this here. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So let's look at. Let's assume that this is an asset account. Okay. And you know, in an asset account, generally the balance would be debit. So, for example, let me take an asset account. Cash. The amount of cash that you have is going to be a debit balance for the business, from the business point of view. If I am the business, the amount of cash that I have is a debit balance for me. So let me straight away put this without saying asset account. Let me say cash. Okay. The cash account. So the cash account has debit balance by nature. Now let's assume a customer is going to come and give you more cash. So what is going to happen with your cash amount? The cash amount is going to go up. If it is to go up, what should happen in the account? What should happen in the account? The amount of debits should go up. Amounts of debits should go up. You see? So when you put more and more debits into this account, the debit balance will go up, which means your asset account balance will go up. On the other side, if you go and put credits, what will this credit do is, Credit will reduce the balance that you have in this account. So credits will reduce the account balance. You have to understand this very clearly. In an asset account, when you put more and more debits, the debit balance go up or let's say increase. Debit balance increases. But when you put more and more credits into it, what will happen? The balance will come down. Okay, so you need to understand this very clearly. In an asset account, when you put more and more debits, the balance of the account goes up, which is a debit balance. But if you put more and more credits into the account, which is the right side, the debit balance will come down. The debit balance decreases. You have to be very clear with this. Can you take down this page? So now let us take a liability account. Okay. Now by nature, you know the normal balance of a liability account is credit. Okay, the normal balance of a liability account is credit. Okay, right. Now what do you mean by liability? You have to pay. You have to pay people more money. So the customer deposits that you have got is a liability to you because you need to pay back the depositors. Now when you get more and more deposits means, what should it mean? Your liability is going to go up. The liability is going to go up. So if you want to increase your liability, what should you do? You have to go and increase or put more and more credits. When you go and put more and more credits means your credit balance increases. Okay, so which means when more and more depositors coming in and putting money means your credit balance will go up, which means your liability will go up. But let us assume customers are coming and taking out money from your bank, which means now you need to bring down this liability account balance down. So what you need to do down? To bring it down, you can't go and put credits. What do you need to do? You need to go and put debits. So when you put more and more debits means your balance will come down. Your balance will come down. So which means the credit balance decreases. So how you can understand this is, first you need to understand whether it is an asset, liability, income, expense, capital, or dividend. Then you need to know what is its normal balance. This is called the normal balance. So depending on its normal balance, you can understand if it is credit, and when you go and put more and more credits into the account, the balance will go up. If it is a normal balance is credit, and if you go and put debits into that account, the balance will come down. So this is what we normally say to the customers when their account balance increasing and coming down. When the balance is coming down means they are taking out money more and more. If their balance is going up means they are coming and putting in more and more deposits into their account. I hope it is clear. You also can take down this also, just for example. Okay. So let's go back to the presentation. So I'll just quickly run through the types. If it's an asset, when you put more and more debits means the balance increases. So the increases the balance when you put more and more debits. The balance will come down when you put more and more credit into the account. Now this is very interesting. The expense account is somewhat similar to the asset account. Why? Asset is also has a debit balance by nature, and the credit expense account is also having a normal balance of debit. So the behavior of both accounts is same. When you put more and more debits, the balance of the debit is increasing, which means the asset balance is also increasing. The expense balance is also increasing. If you put more and more credits into it, asset balance will come down, expense is also coming down. Similarly, when you look at a liability account, you know by nature it is having a normal credit balance. And when you put more and more credits into it, the balance will go up. And if you put more and more debits into it, the balance will come down. Because by nature, the liability account has a normal credit balance. Where do we have it similar? The revenue or the income. Because the income also has a credit balance normally. So when you put more and more credits, your income will go up. When you put more and more debits, your income will come down. You have to understand this very clearly. And this is also equal to the equity, because equity means when you have capital, you know it is a credit balance. So when you put more and more credits, the credit will go up, means the equity balance will go up. And when you put more and more debits, the balance will come down. So that's brings us end of the first, the accounting process. So if you have any questions, please ask before we move on to the next topic. Okay, so by looking at the responses, I can see right. So we move on with the chapter 3, which we are trying to do now. I would like to know whether you can see the screen. Presentation was visible?
Yes, sir.
Right. So we'll get on with chapter 3, which is on accounting concepts. So this is again another fundamental that you need to know when we are into the financial reporting or accounting activity. Okay. So what do you mean by accounting concept and what are the concepts that we have? And I hope this handout was available to you in your portal. So let's start. The main objective of an accounting concept is to maintain uniformity and consistency in accounting records. That is fundamental. The main objective of accounting is to maintain uniformity and consistency in the accounting records that you maintain. So if you are doing accounting in a particular way, you expect all other companies also to do the same. What happens if not? There will be no uniformity and there will be no consistency also. Even within your organization, that is within your company, you have to maintain uniformity and consistency. It is very important. But how can we do it? Because people might change from time to time. People might have with new ideas, but it should not impact the accounting process. The accounting process should be uniform and consistent. Now, how can we maintain this uniformity and consistency? It is simply by adopting the accounting concepts. The accounting concepts will help you to maintain this uniformity and consistency, because that is something like a guiding principle which allows you to maintain uniformity and consistency in your accounting records. So if you look at it, the accounting concepts will be divided into three components. Yes, fine. No. Fine. Sorry. So the accounting concepts can be divided into three components, namely the basic accounting assumptions, accounting rules, and accounting conventions. So when we say concepts has three components. One is, it could be an assumption, it could be a rule, it could be a convention. You can use any of those to maintain this uniformity and consistency. And you need to understand these assumptions, rules, and conventions have been developed over a period of time. So people have started following or adopting these assumptions, rules, and conventions because they were considered to be the best practices. They were considered to be the best practices. So as a result, companies, accountants, accounting bodies, everybody have started adopting and following these accounting concepts because they were considered useful in maintaining uniformity and consistency in financial reporting. So let us look at one by one the accounting assumptions, rules, and conventions. So starting with the first accounting assumption, where we say the business entity concept. So beforehand, I will have to tell one more thing, that is whatever the concept that we are going to learn here, it has two components. One is the definition of the concept, and number two, why it is important, the significance. So when you are going for the exam, you need to know both, because sometimes you might have to define or provide the definition of these concepts, or sometimes they might give you the definition and there are only 4 answers given and you need to select the correct concept. On the other side, sometimes you might need to know why it is important for you to adopt this concept, because how am I going to apply this into my financial reporting process? Okay, so the concepts that we are going to learn actually has 2 aspects. One is its definition, the other one is its significance. So I will take, I have put it in 2 slides. One is to understand the definition, and the second one is to understand the significance. So you will see at the top, I would say whether it is an accounting assumption or rule or convention, and the second line I would say what is the concept is. And under each concept, you will have 1 slide to show the definition and 1 slide to show the significance. Okay, right. So the business entity concept, the definition is, it assumes that for accounting purposes, the business enterprise and its owners are 2 separate independent entities. Very important. Now we have been learning what is accounting, who are the users of this financial accounting information, what is the process, and what are debits and credits. We have learned all these things up to now. But what is very important to understand is, when you are doing financial reporting, representing a company, you are doing it for the company or the entity. And the entity is a fictitious element. There is no person there. It's a body, fictitious body. So to this fictitious body only, we are preparing financial statements or maintaining accounting records, everything. So every transactions that we encounter or we perform or we record have to be looked at from the point of view of the entity. This you have to remember. When you go to the exam, every question that you get, you have to go into the particular company's shoes and look at it from that point of view. Not from the point of view of you or maybe the person who is involved in the transaction. Say a customer coming and depositing money. We have to look at this transaction from the bank's point of view, not from the customer's point of view. So you will raise your debits and credits based on looking at from the bank's point of view. Okay, so before going ahead, let me explain this. A customer coming with money to deposit in the bank. Okay, so what do? You accept the cash and give your validation or a seal placed or stamp placed on the counterfoil or the deposit slip, and you will give it back to the customer. Now that is the transaction proof. Now you have to perform this transaction in your system or computer system or whatever. Now you need to understand what this transaction is. This is a customer deposit. So you will go through the options and take and process the transaction. Now this transaction has 2 ends. One is you have received cash from the customer, and on the other side, you have a liability to the customer to pay it later. Now from whose point of view I am looking at? From the bank's point of view. So bank has received an asset, which is the cash, and on the other side, bank has a liability towards the depositor. Now, how do I record this? I have an asset which is cash, and I have a liability which is called the deposits. So cash is my asset, deposit is my liability. You see, I'm looking at it from the bank's point of view, not from the customer's point of view, not from the person who is doing the transactions point of view. It is always from the entity's point of view, that is the company's point of view. I have to look at every transaction, the result of every transaction, whether it is an asset or a liability or equity or income and expense, what it is for the company. Now, where do we get this idea? It is from the business entity concept. That is where the business entity concept assumes that for accounting purposes, the business enterprise and its owners are two separate independent entities. So which means we know that who has given the capital or the equity to the company? It is the shareholders or the owners. But once they have given money to the business, they are looked at separately. They does not belong to the company. They are outsiders. Who is the company? The fictitious person. Now let me take an example. Let's say you have set up a company with the name, I'm just taking an example, let's say Singer Sri Lanka. So there are so much of shareholders who have put money to build up this company called Singer Sri Lanka. And you are working there as an accountant in Singer Sri Lanka. And you are required to prepare accounts or the financial statements for Singer Sri Lanka. Now, when you prepare accounts, you have to look at it from the point of view of Singer Sri Lanka, not from the point of view of the people who have given money. They may be owners, but the transactions are looked at from the point of view of the company, which is Singer Sri Lanka. Likewise, in our respective organizations, that every bank, what do? We do every transaction from the point of view of the bank. We classify them as asset, liability, equity, or whatever from the point of view of the bank. How is it going to reflect in the company? Therefore, the business and the personal transactions of an owner has to be separated. Now, this takes us to a different example. Let's say you are going to put up your own business. And you know what it is called as? It is called a sole proprietorship, which means the business is owned by you and you have put up this business. Now, let's say you are a person who is doing a car sales. Your company is a car sales company and it is in your name. Now, there are, say, 50 cars displayed in your showroom. 50 cars displayed in your showroom where people will come and look at your vehicles and they will buy from you. But there comes a situation where you will also need a vehicle now because your existing vehicle has gone bad or you have decided to sell that vehicle. Now you want to buy a new vehicle. If you decide to go and take one of the 50 vehicles that you have it in your showroom for your personal use, then there is a conflict. Which means the business entity concept says that if you are taking a vehicle from your business, it is not correct because it becomes a personal transaction of yours. You can't perform personal transactions with your business. If you are doing so, then it has to be treated separately. You can't just say, look, this is my vehicle. I am the one who is selling 50 vehicles here. So I can take easily one. No, you can't do that. Because you are running a business. The 50 vehicles that you had in your showroom belongs to the business. Even though you are the owner of this particular business. So the business and your personal transaction have to be separated. That is where we say the business entity concept is. The business entity concept understands that the owner and the business are two separate. We call it as two separate independent entities. The term entity does not always mean a company. I told you all. Even a person, you and your business are two separate independent entities. From where do we get this? That is from the business entity concept. What is the significance? It helps in ascertaining the profit of the business as only the business expenses and revenue are recorded, and all the private transactions and expenses are ignored. So as I told you, the business will consider only the profit that you have made from all the business transactions, not from your private transactions. It also restrains accountants from recording of owners' private or personal transactions. So the business entity concept clearly says you should not record any private or personal transaction in the accounting records. It facilitates the recording and reporting of business transaction from the business point of view. Please, if you have taken a printout of this presentation or whatever, please make a note and underline. You are looking at the business transaction from the business point of view. Very important. That is what I have been repeatedly saying. You have to look at the transactions from the business point of view. That is what business entity concept is. Then we go on to the next concept under the accounting assumptions, which is called the money measurement concept. So what is the definition? It assumes that all business transactions must be in terms of money. I told you, if you are a profit-making or non-profit-making organization, you have to measure all business transactions in terms of money. That is in the currency of a country. So in Sri Lanka, we have to measure all transactions in terms of rupees, in terms of Sri Lankan rupees and cents, Sri Lankan rupees and cents. But it doesn't mean that we don't do transactions in other currencies. Yes, we do. We do dollar transactions, we do euro transactions. You must be knowing better than me in your business organizations, because you might accept foreign currency and you might give foreign currency. But what does this concept say? End of the day, everything has to be converted into Sri Lankan rupees and cents, because that is what money measurement concept is. All business transactions must be in terms of money. Excuse me. What is the significance? It guides accountants what to record and what not to record. It also helps in recording business transactions uniformly. If all business transactions are expressed in monetary terms, it will be easy to understand the accounts prepared by the business enterprise. It also facilitates comparison of business performance. So you know, now we are talking about all the transactions in monetary terms, rupees and cents. So it will be easy for you when you talk every transaction in terms of rupees and cents, because when you put all together, you know what is your profit or what is your loss, which is your business performance. So it will be easy to understand when we are looking at a company's performance, how much of profit this company has made or how much of a loss this company has made in terms of rupees and cents. Now, let me take you an example. You want to compare two banks. You want to compare two banks. How do we compare the performance of two banks? Number one, we will look at the asset size of the bank. Now today, you know, some of the banks have passed the 1 trillion mark, 1 trillion rupees mark in their assets, total assets. So which is a huge amount, which is a huge amount. So I want to put a quiz to you all at this point in time. That is, can someone tell me how many zeros are there in the trillion? You can post your answer in the form of a chat. How many zeros are there in 1 trillion? How many zeros are there in 1 trillion? So I've got answers 9, 10, and I also had an answer of 15. I hope all are bankers. So it's very interesting to note. Let's look at your answers. We have got 9, we have got 12, we have got 10. And somebody said 15 also, yes. So what is actually 1 trillion is 1 trillion. So let's start with this. How much is this? 1,000. Okay, 1,000. Now
1 million.
1 million. Good. Now
1 billion.
1 billion. So let me put it down. 1 billion. This is 1 billion. Okay. Now what is it? What is it now? Yes? What is it now? Why everyone is silent? That is 1 trillion. That is 1 trillion. So when you reach 999 here, you come to 1,000. When you reach 999,999, you reach 1 million. Then when you reach 999 million, you reach 1 billion. And when you reach 999 blah 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 billion, you reach 1 trillion. So how many zeros are there?
12.
12. So you need to know. This is very fundamental because you need to know how many zeros are there. Right. So the money measurement concept only tells you like how you will measure your performance in terms of rupees and cents. Okay. Third concept, very important. I think I would have spoken about this already. It is the going concern concept. We call it as going concern concept. What does it mean? Every business will continue to carry on its activities for an indefinite period of time. Please note the term indefinite period. Indefinite period means we don't know how long it is. So which means when we are doing accounting for every business, we understand that this business is going to go for an unknown future. That is what you call as indefinite period. If you know that this is going to end in the next year or maybe year after, then your financial statements will have a different perspective, where you will have to come and say that, look, my business operations are going to end in the next year. But we don't prepare financial statements with that motive. So every business is run with the intention that it is going to continue for an indefinite period. Okay? Or in other words, it means that every business entity has continuity of life. Sorry. Thus, it will not be dissolved in the near future. If you know in advance that it is going to be closed down in the next month or maybe say next year, then you have to specify in your business operations that it is going to be closed down. Then the financial reporting also will be different to what you do normally. In general, we understand that the going concern concept will give you the authority to prepare financial statement because the company is going to continue for an unknown future. That is the definition. What is the significance? It facilitates preparation of financial statements, as I told you. On the basis of this concept, we are going to introduce a new term which is called the depreciation is charged on the fixed assets. Now the term depreciation, I think some of you might know, but let me put it in a nutshell very simply. Now today I am going and purchasing, let's say, some tables and chairs to your branch. Okay. Now these tables and chairs are going to be there for the next 5 years or 10 years, we don't know. As long as the bank is functioning and the branch is operating, these furnitures are going to be there. And you are going to use these furnitures until those are available at this particular location. So there is wear and tear to these assets because furnitures, tables, all are your assets. These assets are going to go through a wear and tear. Wear and tear means because of the usage, there is going to be certain damage or disruption to the assets. So you need to account for this wear and tear. Because I am using it, there is a depletion of the asset. So this wear and tear is called in accounting terms as depreciation. If you really look at it, the depreciation does not have a monetary value. Does not have a monetary value because what I have taken in is the asset. I have paid for the asset and brought it in. But every other expense that you do normally has a monetary value. Say, for example, if you consume electricity, you have to pay the electricity bill. If you have consumed water, you have to pay for it. But depreciation is something different to that. Depreciation is done on the basis that this company is going to go and continue for an unknown future. As a result, I need to charge depreciation on all the fixed assets. Fixed assets means these tables, chairs, computers, buildings, all include. We have to cover that as a separate topic, which is LKS 16. We will do it later. So why do we charge depreciation? Because we understand that the company is going to continue for an indefinite period. Further, it is of great help to the investors because it assures them that they will continue to get income on their investments. Very important. Why do you want people to come and invest in your company? Is because if you perform well, they know that they are going to get a return back. What is the return to them? It is the dividend that they get. So investors will be more keen towards this company because when they know that your company is doing well and they will get a better return. A business is going to be judged for its capacity to earn profits in future. That is looking at the going concern concept of the company. Before we move on to the accounting rules, do we have any questions? If you want, you can raise the questions. If you have any questions, please. Okay. So let's go into the accounting rules. The first rule is going to be the accounting period concept. So all transactions are recorded in the books of accounts on this assumption that profits on these transactions are to be ascertained for a specific period, Now this you need to understand better. So I will take use of the board to explain this. So you know that accounting or the business performance the business performance of a company is measured for a particular period, for a particular time period. Generally, we consider a time period of 12 months. A time period of 12 months. What do? We ascertain all the income and expenses that you have incurred within this 12-month period, which is known as your accounting period. See? So we generally consider there is an accounting period which is roughly covering 12 months, and within this 12 months you ascertain all the income and expenses that have been incurred by this company. Okay, not in terms of paid but in terms of incurred. So what it means is this accounting period of 12 months is now going to be understood as your accounting period for financial reporting. What do I need to do? I need to start from day one to capture all income expense pertaining to that particular period. And this is what we call it as financial year. So going forward, I will make use of this term financial year, which you need to understand that it is the accounting period. And companies also always come and say that they have published their financial statement for the financial year ended 2019. So the recent financial year that was ended, is 2019. But some companies might say, my financial year was 2020. Now we get a question here. How can we call it as 2020 when we don't have or we haven't completed 2020 yet? This is where you need to understand it very clearly. Now our calendar month is from, let's say, January to December. Okay. January to December, the 12 months. Okay. Now we normally consider from 1st Jan to 31st December. And we call this as my financial year. Call this as my financial year. So what is the latest that we have completed this time period? That is 2019. You see, the 2019 only we have completed from 1st Jan to 31st December. So we have completed that time period. Now if you look at it, for majority of the banks that we have in Sri Lanka, they go through this particular cycle, that is 1st January to 31st December. So we call them as 31st December companies. 31st December companies. Why? Their financial year of 12 months is from 1st Jan to 31st December of every year. So in other words, the financial year is from 1st January to 31st December. So almost all the banks in Sri Lanka are 31st December financial year companies. But there are exceptions also. Certain companies, they operate from here. That is from April 1st, they start operating. Their financial year is considered to be from April 1st. Now you need to understand what is going to happen here. We said that it is 12 months for an accounting period. So if they go and start in April, what is going to happen? When you go through this way of 12 months, you complete December and you will go for another 3 months, January, February and March. Now what is going to happen here? If you start from April 1st in one particular financial year, which is not called as a financial year, let's say calendar year, in order to complete your 12 months, you will go into another calendar year. Another calendar year. So in other words, it is from April 1st or 1st of April to, what is the last date? 31st March. 31st March. Now in the previous example, we saw it is a 31st December company. Now we say it is going to be a 31st March company. 31st March company, because their financial year is going across 2 calendar years. So now we can say that if you really look at it, in the current context, there are companies which have completed 2 kinds of financial year. One, which have completed 31st December 2019. The other one is 31st March 2020. You see. So there are 2 types of companies which have completed their financial years. There are 31st December 2019 companies, 31st March 2020 companies. Is that clear? So you need to understand this, because in your exams, the financial year or the accounting period is very important, where we consider a period of 12 months, and within this 12 months, you know, one could be where it is normally running with the calendar year, that is 1st Jan to 31st December. But there are companies from 1st April to 31st March. That is again another financial year. But the difference here is it is running into 2 calendar years. So the latest one that we have, if you see, from 1st of April 2019 to 31st March 2020. And there are various kinds of companies in the world. From country to country, there could be differences. For example, I would say in Australia, I was told that the financial year there is from 1st of July to, when do you think? It will be 1st of July to
31st of June.
30th of June. So, which means the financial year of these companies from the 1st of July to 30th of June next year. 30th of June next year, which means if you look at the current calendar year, by this 30th June, almost ending 30th June. So by this 30th June, some of the companies globally will be completing their financial year for 2020. Okay. So it's very clear that financial year means it could be anything. It need not be from January to December or 1st April to 31st March or 1st July to 30th June. You can have it in the any way that you want. You can even start with 1st of May. No one will. But there is a general practice which you go or want to go with other companies. What happens? If not, you may not be able to compare your results with others. Say for example, if you are the only bank who is doing from 1st to December and all the other banks are doing from 1st April to 31st March, you can't compare your performance with them. Okay. So that is why it is always notable that you want to make your financial year incomparable with others. Either you have to make an adjustment in one particular year to make it in line with the financial years adopted by others. Okay. And one have asked the question why the tax year is from 1st April to 31st March. Because mostly the tax department want to regulate their tax year from this 1st of April. So all regulations, all directions that they issue, they consider it from 1st of April to 31st March. So what happens if your company is also doing accounts from 1st of April to 31st March, it will be very easy for you because that is going to be the financial year for you as well as the tax year. I didn't discuss about it at this moment because it's not relevant. We call it as the tax year. So it need not be always where the financial year and the tax year to be same. No need for it. But it will be easy if you have both same. Whatever that you look for is same as what the Inland Revenue Department also looks at. So the tax year, whatever the financial year for a company is, irrespective of that, the tax year is always from 1st of April to 31st March. Okay. So please make a note of that. So the accounting period is actually where all transactions are recorded in your books for performance evaluation considering a period of 12 months. What is the significance? It helps in predicting the future prospects of the business. It helps in calculating tax on business income calculated for a particular time period. So you know why the accounting period concept or the financial year is important, because that will be easy for you to calculate your taxes. But as I told you, it is not necessary for you to have your financial year in line with the tax year. That is not relevant. It also helps the business firms to distribute their income at regular intervals as dividends. Now, this is very important. As a company, you know, the owners of the company, that is your shareholders, will always look for you with regard to your business performance. So if you have performed well, then the shareholders will always request, or maybe say they will look forward for a return from their investment. What is the return? That is the dividends. Now, dividends cannot be distributed as and when you want. It has to be in a certain way that you distribute the dividends to your shareholders. So how best you can distribute the dividends is you make a practice that you assess your performance for a particular financial year, and soon after the financial year, if there is adequate income or profit, you will distribute part of it to the shareholders. That is why almost all the companies, once they complete their financial year, they produce a document called, which is their annual report, and they send it to their shareholders, and they will have a grand event of a annual general meeting. And in this annual general meeting, they declare dividends to its shareholders to make these investors or the shareholders happy and keep them invested with your company. Okay. So before going into this accrual concept and matching concept, let us go to this periodicity concept, because it will make us very easy to understand what we want to do here. So as I told you, the accounting period concept talks about the financial year, or how you want to prepare your financial statement. So that is commonly known as the financial year. But in your respective organizations, you can't wait for a year to prepare your financial statement, because your performance have to be internally evaluated at every point in time. You can't wait till the year end to evaluate your performance. No, you can't do that. So your company internal management, that is your corporate management, senior management, or your middle management, might want to see how this company has performed. Now, in order to do that, what you need to do is, in addition to your annual financial statements, you need to prepare financial statements for internal purpose. Now, this internal purpose means where you take the entire financial year and break it into pieces. So this breaking into pieces means you can consider various types of reporting periods. Let me take you that example. Now we understood that the financial year is made up of within this calendar year of January to December, or April 1st to whatever. Now this periodicity concept means, let me erase all the other. What does this periodicity concept says is, apart from this financial year reporting, you can decide to report on a monthly basis. Monthly reporting. That is to your internal management. What do we do here? We take month by month. 1st of January to 31st January. 1st of February to 28th of February. 1st of March to 31st of March. Likewise, you do your monthly reporting to your internal management. In banks and most of the companies, what they do is, on a monthly basis, they will have something called the board meeting. which is called the meeting conducted by the directors, board of directors, to discuss the matters or the performance of the company, and also to look at what is the way forward. So for them to make decisions at this meeting, they need to know what is the performance. So in order to evaluate the performance, what do we do here? We take this entire financial year into pieces. So we consider the month of January, February, March, April, likewise. You break it into 12 periods. That is for internal purposes, where you break the entire financial year into small pieces, like 12 periods. That is for the internal purpose. But what happens, even for regulatory and external reporting, you know, to your shareholders, you have to report for the financial year. But shareholders cannot wait till the year end for you to come and tell them, look, this is my profit, or this is my loss, or this is what I have done during the period. No, shareholders can't wait that long to know what the company is doing. So as a result, what happens? The Colombo Stock Exchange has come up with rules for companies to make quarterly financial statements to be published. So what do you mean by these quarterly financial statements? As at 31st March, you need to make a publication, which is covering the period of 3 months, January to March. So what does happen? Whatever the performance pertaining to these 3 months, the shareholder will come to know. Then again, they want you to make another financial statement publication as of 30th June. So now you have covered 3 months. Now you have covering another 3 months. Then thereafter, again, as at end of 30th September, another 3 months. And finally, as at 31st December, which is the last 3 months. So altogether, you will see what does the Colombo Stock Exchange has done is the financial year of yours, if it is a January to December company, your financial year is broken into 3-month periods. So which means we say 4 quarters. So companies will have to do a quarterly financial reporting like this. Whether you are from 1st of April to 31st March, or whether you are from 1st of July to 30th June, it doesn't matter. As at every quarter, these are the specific dates: 31st March, 30th June, 30th September, and 31st December. As at these specific dates, you need to report your results to your investors or to the shareholders through the Colombo Stock Exchange. That is a must. You have to do. So as of now, that is the current requirement in Sri Lanka, where the stock exchange has clearly mentioned all listed companies in the Colombo Stock Exchange have to provide financial information on a quarterly basis on these dates. As of these dates, not on these dates, as of these dates. So what does it mean? As of 31st March, you need to publish before 15th of May. They give you 45 days to publish the financial statement. As of 30th June, you have to publish it before 15th of August. This is 15th of November. And the last one, the only exception is they have given you about 2 months. Since it is the year end and you are doing the audit, they have given you 2 months. So basically, this is what periodicity concept means. For internal reporting, you may divide it into 12 monthly periods. But for external, where regulators will come and tell you, look, you have to prepare your financial statements on a quarterly basis to be provided to the investors. So with that, we will stop here today. And if you have any questions,
Yes, sir.
go ahead. If you have any questions, please raise. Okay, so since there are no questions, we will stop it here. And I want you to revise all the work. Unfortunately, I couldn't put you the question pack as I promised last week, but I'll try to make it possible if I'll make it available by this Friday, if possible. Meantime, whatever it is, I want you all to revise all whatever we have done so far. And if you have any questions, I think I gave you all the email address. So you all can post me to that email address so that I can respond if you want, or you can raise it at the next class at the beginning. Just you can put it as a chat message. And in addition to that, if you have any difficulties in connecting, or maybe say with regard to the screens that you see, if you have any problems, you can always refer it to the IBSL so that they can make arrangements when we meet next time, or maybe say prior to that. So hope what we learned today is very clear to you all, and hope to meet you soon. Thank you.